You're listening to Let's Talk Sustainable Business.
Hi, my name is Barbara Mendes George, and I am a sustainability communications expert based in Brussels, Belgium. It's a pleasure to welcome you to this edition of Let's Talk Sustainable Business, a series brought to you by the Conference Board. This is the second instalment of our two-part episode with Mari Granstrom from Origin by Ocean. If you haven't listened to part one yet, please do go back into our catalogue to listen to it first. So, welcome back, Mari.
Thank you very much.
So in part one of this two-part episode, I quoted you as saying, "We believe that in order for things to happen at a massive scale, it has to be turned into an industry, one with a reimagined value chain." So where on the journey do you feel that you are, and what do you think are the most important changes that need to happen in the next, let's say, 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, so we are going through a scale up now. So we have started the whole development, of course, from the lab as you do. And then slowly you start to reach the certain scale and then you go for the piloting. So we are doing the piloting as we speak.
Mhm.
And we will have our first commercial operations here in Finland in 26. So there is not a lot of time, but we are very ambitious and so far so good. And when I was talking about things happening at industrial scale, it's very important to understand that, especially if you want to leave a positive impact and you are dealing with the problem that we are dealing with, you have to do things at larger scale. Otherwise, I mean, it's a stupid thing to say, because then people say, well, okay, now she's saying that, and it doesn't really matter if I recycle my rubbish, but every single small thing counts. But in this business, you have to have a certain scale to also reach the economy of scale. So that's why we are very excited that we can build these commercial operations, and they need to happen at a chemical industry scale, if you like.
Yeah, that's wonderful that it can be in Finland as well, where you're based from. So, yeah, do you have any plans for kind of expanding that in future, going beyond Finland, perhaps even beyond Europe?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So Finland is just the MVP for us, so the minimum viable product, we call it.
Mhm.
And in this business, you have to be able to prove that you can have commercial operations at a certain scale. So it's not going to be big, 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 but it's going to be MVP. And then you can copy paste the process and the biorefinery concept. And the next biorefinery will be in the Caribbean region. So we are already working on that, even though that we don't have the small operation plant ready, but we already, we have to plan the next one. So we are looking at maybe 28, 29, that the
Okay.
second biorefinery will be in the Caribbean, and it will be way bigger,
Mhm.
because then we know we've done our homework with the first one, and then we can just take it wherever we have the biomass problem. So we need to remember that the biorefinery needs to be there where the problem is. So we
Mhm.
don't want to have this very long logistical chains or anything like that for the feedstock. So that's why it's important that we can be there where the problem is located.
That's really great that you can be. And I mean, the question that comes to my mind is, who are there any organizations in the Caribbean that you're working with that you'd like to kind of shout out who are doing good work on this? And I guess, do you have a plan on kind of how to sustainably provide jobs and opportunities for people in the region?
Yeah, that's a very important point, and it's kind of been my dream that when you are dealing with these type of issues, and it kind of kills me to see that normally people who actually don't have anything to do with the problem, they are the ones who are suffering, like the whole story of the climate change, right? And um, and that's why we don't want to be very visible in the Dominican Republic, as an example. But we are buying services from the locals and local businesses and communities. So I think it's very important to empower people to work on the problem they are facing in their everyday lives. It doesn't make any sense that people from Finland would go to the Caribbean and we would establish a harvesting, like algae harvesting business, and we would take like the whole value chain uh, for us. But on the contrary, we want to give that to people and to that country, and that they will have the income as well. And also from the point that normally in these countries, the educational level can be a bit lower compared to EU, for example. uh, it's important that when you establish the businesses there, that if we are talking about this biorefinery concept, that also means that we can educate people to run these type of processes, and then you can have the whole value chain in that country or in that region where the problem is. And I think that's one of the driving forces we have as a company, is to do in that way. I'm always saying that, and maybe this is not very politically correct, but I'm always saying that we don't want to be this Del Monte man type of thing, that we go somewhere and we just exploit and take everything out and then just leave, like, rubbish behind, so to speak. But we really want to empower the local communities to work on this.
Exactly. And I think what, let's say the West has been increasingly realizing is that, as outsiders, you might come in and see social and environmental problems in other countries, but you really have to talk with the local communities to see, whether it is a problem, whether there are other problems, and whether, if you then start investing and trying to resolve it, if there are the people there who are able to do it. So it sounds like you're doing it fairly sensitively, and as you say, kind of trying to get the population involved, which sounds very positive. But flying back to Europe from the Caribbean, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about EU policy, because I briefly mentioned the EU's Blue Bioeconomy Strategy. And on your website, you talk about the EU chemicals and EU plastic strategies, the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So it seems to me that you follow EU and maybe global climate and oceans policy closely. So how much do you follow it, and how does policy impact your everyday work in a startup?
We follow that a lot. I think it's important to understand what's happening, and what kind of a direction different regions are taking. Of course, especially EU. Um, I think that you can't build a business on policy,
Mm-hmm.
or changes in policies, or anything like that. I think it's good to keep that in mind, that they are there, they go through changes, they are part of the politics, so we know how politics can change. So you can't really rely on them, and they are very slow processes. But I think that nevertheless you have to understand them, and you have to be able to influence them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that we also do, even though that we are a small company, but we've been very lucky to get ourselves into these discussions at EU level, and they are listening to us. And I think the Blue Bioeconomy Initiative is a good example of starting to draft something which is not very typical for Europe as a region. And normally, when you start to do these new things, you are facing quite a lot of very layered problems. And of course, when you start to work on it, you just want to make a bit of a shortcut, right? Like, let's make it a bit easier for people to understand. And normally, that's very dangerous, because then you start to kind of ignore important points, and maybe, I don't know, story of my life, maybe I'm always that person who wants to talk about these tiny, nitty-gritty details, and say that, we have to remember these things, because we can go wrong. Like, seaweed is not the savior of this world or climate change, even though that you see these massive things about seaweed today, like it can take this and this amount of CO2, and it can save this and that. It's all good. It's all good, but I think that it needs to be, backed up with hardcore science and data before we can make these claims. And also the fact that we are talking about a biomass, which is a resource, and it needs to have a value. So we have to make sure that the biomass we are using is sustainable. So that's why I don't support a widely harvested kelp, for example. So we don't, as a company, we don't buy that. Kelp should be left where it is growing. We don't have enough kelp forest, for example. So we have to be very careful on that as well.
Yeah, on the dealing with an issue at the time, it's a bit of a double-edged sword, because I think the example that I always think about is all the statistics that you see on how energy efficiency saves you so much money. It's a no-brainer, and it's like, yes, but if it was that easy to retrofit buildings, of course everyone would do it, at the drop of a hat. And while, yeah, it's important to have all the statistics that we mentioned in part one of the money and the value and everything else, like, I think you do need to take a step back sometimes and say, okay, we need to deal with this one problem at a time, and therefore it makes sense that you've dealt with algae as something that is a huge problem, and you have the technology to help extract the nutrients from it. If you had kind of one ask for EU policymakers at the moment, or maybe policymakers worldwide, what would you like to see more of in oceans policy?
Well, I think first of all, we should understand the oceans. I think we don't really. Like,
Mm.
we don't really understand how all of the things, what we are doing, all the operations we are running as human beings, how these are affecting the oceans. We really don't understand. I think I would say that first build a solid understanding before you make any decisions. For example, the deep sea mining, the
Hmm.
craziness, and
Hmm.
you can see the lobbies saying that no, it's good. They're like, no worries, we can do this. But no one knows. I mean, we don't live in those 2 kilometers, like 2 kilometers depth. We don't know the ecosystems. We don't understand. And I think it's lazy to go and say that something is okay when clearly we have no idea. So I'm always saying that first build a solid understanding, take the time to do that, and then start to make decisions based on the data that you have discovered. And this goes hand in hand with the funding that universities need to have. So that's my other favorite topic, to talk about academic research. So I will keep it short. But I think that the problem with academia today is that they are serving way too much industry. They are so focused to get money from the industry and trying to serve that type of a business. And we are starting to forget that the kind of the golden rules of the academia is there to produce new science, new informations, and really learn like different phenomenon or something like that. And this is what we need now, especially when we are talking about the oceans, that we need to put money into the research so that we get all that data, what we need to base our decisions on.
Yeah, very interesting. I think this is maybe the first time that academia has come up on the podcast. And yeah, as you say, that it really is a problem of funding and kind of, I guess, the role of the state as well in funding academia versus business and the issues there. Very interesting. I mean, yeah, I think one of the reasons why I wanted to ask about kind of environmental policy as a startup is because, yeah, I wanted to know kind of what challenges have you faced on the road to setting up Origin by Ocean, and on the contrast, what have been some unexpected positives from going down this kind of more environmental route?
Oh yeah, so we have had quite a journey, and I think it's been amazing journey.
Hmm.
You always have a lot of drawbacks, and but those are kind of the salt of the thing that you learn from all of the problems. You always learn. So if everything is going well, you know that something is not right. So you have to have these problems, and I'm very grateful for all of the problems we have had, because we have learned as a team. We have learned how to work as a team. We have learned how to deal with different type of problems, and mostly we have learned that yes, we can change things by doing. Like, I think lead by example is one of the things that we've been doing as a small team. When we started Origin by Ocean, no one believed in us. Everyone was saying that's completely crazy idea coming from Finland. Oh my God, how you can build a bioeconomy based on the ocean and the seas? But like, we are Finland, we have a forest. So
Yeah.
we have this kind of a tradition that bioeconomy, is built, on the forest, whatever that means. But you have to use, timber, trees somehow in your process. And of course, we did it. So that was something that people they found it very strange, and we didn't get a lot of support. When we got started, not even from the universities, and even some of the professors, they turned against us to say that this is completely madness. And then I decided that, okay, well, we heard you guys, and, and now we will focus on doing things. And luckily, we found people that they believed in us, they believed the vision, and they said that, yeah, we want to be part of this story, and let's try. Why not? Let's give it a go. And that's how we started. So I think the big learning was that if you have a vision and you do things from the common good, you are not there to put yourself out there as a savior or anything, but you do that for the common good. Things will happen. You just have to do it. Like, just start working on things. I think that's something that at least I learned and I kind of appreciate the fact that by doing you can show that things actually can work.
Wow, that's really inspiring. So I guess even when most people were against you, you found your tribe of people who believed in you, and that was helpful. And I wonder as well if the fact that you have such a strong science background helped, because you're like, the science is there to help resolve this problem. So it's now just a question of aligning it with a business model. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And it's very important. I'm glad that you're bringing that up because when you are starting a startup, you have to have a business model and you need to understand how the business model works. So you need to understand the framework within you have to function so that it gives you the targets and it gives you everything. So you know that where you have to go. And it's very, very important.
So, someone who's listening to this episode and is maybe either inspired to start an environmentally focused startup, or maybe, try and make trying to put environment more at the heart of their career, what's one or two pieces of advice that you would give to them?
You have to turn that into a business. Like if you want to have a startup, end of the day, we are a company, so there needs to be a business model. But don't forget that you don't have to do traditional business model, which is like, we need to make growth on top of the growth on top of the growth. But you can have a very different business model where nature has the value. So if you have an Excel sheet, make sure that there is a line for the nature, for the biomass, for whatever you're working with, and you can rethink the business models. You don't have to go through the same story that we've been doing since the first industrial revolution, but we can change the business models. We can be more flexible. We can have an ecosystem services as part of the business model, because when you do good for the environment, you have a big impact. You are also doing a ecosystem service. So that's very important to consider all of the different services you have, not just euros per kilo selling a product, but also having other services there and valuing them.
I think ecosystem service is the phrase of the day, definitely. When you were putting together then your business model, did you use specific tools or specific people who you knew had a different approach to business? How did you bring that together?
Yeah, that we were really lucky to have KPMG Finland to
Mhm.
help us with the business model, and that was something that we actively started to work on. And also, what we realized fairly quickly was that we were trying to calculate the value of nutrient removal within the business model, and it doesn't exist. There is no such a thing as a nutrient credit. But I have to say that now it's starting to happen. So I think you just have to introduce things and say that, okay, in our business model, we also value this part. Uh, of course, we don't have a number for it now, but in the future, there will be a number. And that's something that you also have to prepare your business model for the future, because things will change and hopefully they will change for the good direction, but you have to be part of the change as well.
Wonderful. So to finish up, Mari, I wanted to ask you. Your website says that you're looking for partners, more specifically, members to join your tribe. So, what kind of partners are you looking for, and what kind of companies do you want to work with in the future?
Yeah, so we are kind of building. I love the thing that we call it a tribe, because we want to have like everyone involved, individual people. We have a lot of people contacting us and saying that I have zero experience in a chemical industry or anything what you do, but I have this and this skill. So if you need any help, just give me a call. Which is really touching that people are doing that. We also want to we welcome all kind of partners that we can have an open dialogue with, and we always view them from the angle that if we can help you somehow to make the positive impact in your business, then join us, and let's see how we can do it together. But there needs to be the real willingness to make the change. We don't want to be a vehicle for the greenwashing for anyone. I think there are a lot of good examples out there. We don't want to be that, but we want to do the real thing. So that's how we basically view the partners.
And given that greenwashing is one of the themes for this season, thank you very much, Mari, for wrapping it up like that. Let's all avoid greenwashing. Thank you. So thanks, Mari, for joining us today for part 2. And thanks to our listeners. If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to subscribe to this podcast series and explore the entire catalogue of podcast programming from the Conference Board by visiting our website, tcb.org/podcasts. See you next time.